guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. I'm your host, Pete, joined as always in a second by my co-host, Brian. Welcome in, guys. We're getting to the last couple weeks of the season. Believe it or not, playoff football just around the corner, which is crazy, Brian, to think about. We're just after Christmas here, so we hope you had a great holiday, a Merry Christmas, and also we're going to wish you an early Happy New Year, because by the time you see this and then see us again, it will be into the new year in 2024, which is wild to think about. A lot of great games going on. Playoffs really, really heating up, as you would imagine, and some teams not exactly peaking at the moments you really need them to. Teams that we're used to peaking at this time. With all that being said, Bri, I welcome you in, man. How are you? How was your holiday season? And what are you looking forward to talking about?
Yeah, very good. A late Merry Christmas to you
You as
and
well.
all our viewers out there. And as Chris Berman says, let us be one of the first to wish you a Happy New Year. So let's get that out of the way
Of
too.
course.
But yeah, another good week of football. I mean, in between, of course, all the holiday festivities, trying to keep up with what was going on Christmas Eve and then Christmas Day. It was, wall-to-wall action, some surprising results, I would say. I mean, just to piggyback off your thought about teams that aren't peaking, I think number one that comes to mind, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
So we'll have to get into that. And then some other games too that were of note from last week before we get to our picks. So yeah, always busy in the NFL and ready to dive right in.
Week 16, guys. We're going to kick this off. A lot of interesting games. I don't know if anyone came by the Super Deep Rot stream over on Twitch last Thursday, which was the Rams Saints game. Anyone that came out to that, greatly appreciate that, as I live broadcasted and commentated that game. Big Rams win. Keep it going. But we'll start in some of the big games. This was a huge holiday slate. Probably the biggest I can remember, because you had that aforementioned Thursday game. You had two Saturday games on the 23rd. Christmas Eve had your normal Sunday slate, and then you had three Christmas Day games on Monday. They are really taking advantage of the holidays with the Christmas Day, the Black Friday game this year. They're really trying to kind of expand the market into games where they know people will be at home in front of a television. Seems to be working ratings-wise, so you got to give the NFL a lot of credit there. And Brian, I want to start on Christmas Eve. We'll pick a couple games here, as we always do, for the audience. We got to go to the Dolphins and the Cowboys, right? The Dolphins win this one at home 22-20 on a last-second field goal by good old Jason Sanders. This was kind of a nip-and-tuck game. Really, the momentum swung kind of right in the beginning of the game. The Cowboys drive down the field, huge drive. I think it was like something like 15 plays or something like that. They had the ball on the goal line, and they hand it to the fullback, and a guy I never heard of, I'll be honest, and he kind of fumbles the handoff. The exchange is a little messy, and instead of coming away with probably 7, at least 3, they got nothing. And that really changed the entire kind of story or narrative of the game, and definitely, certainly, the momentum. You had a big catch later on in that quarter for a touchdown in CeeDee Lamb, but it's just like the Cowboys kind of just cannot get out of their own way. And I'm not saying, we're not discounting this Dolphins team, right? They won 11 games now for a reason. But I think you and I and most of the way more prominent NFL media out there have questioned kind of their toughness this year. We've questioned, can they beat good teams? And for everything that Dallas is, they're a good team. And I think this was an important win for Miami. It was a statement win. With the Bills fresh on their heels, you really needed to keep pace ahead of them as well, with them winning the night before on Saturday with their defeat over the Chargers. And I think, for me, I think this was a more important win for Miami more than it was Dallas. Brian, what do you say in that? Who was it more important for, Dallas or Miami?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely important both sides, but I would agree with you from the Miami perspective because that has been one of the themes of this season is that when they've gone up against some stiffer competition, they just have not been able to operate the way they do against the lesser teams. And this was a game where they kind of had to slug it out a little bit, where it wasn't Tua slinging the ball all over the field. I mean, yes, it certainly helped that they had Tyreek Hill back in the lineup. He made his fair share of plays, but wasn't a game wrecker like he is
No.
in a lot of
9 for
games.
99.
But they they just kind of imposed their will on the Cowboys in this game, and I thought especially impressive that the Dallas has the big go-ahead score late on the touchdown pass from Dak to Brandon Cooks, a
Great
tightly
throw.
contested catch, a great throw, great play. And you think, okay, that's going to be the big play for the Cowboys. They take the lead. Now we can see if their defense, which they've relied on all season, can, hold it down. And instead, Miami put a drive together where they got themselves in field goal range and got the game-winning field goal. So yeah, a very, very big win for them. And for the Cowboys, kind of the questions continue about their performance away from home, because this is something that is clearly a trend now. It's now back-to-back losses against AFC East foes on the road, and you just wonder in the playoffs if they get into a situation where they're on the road, are they going to come through? And right now, you'd have to feel that that's pretty questionable.
Yeah, I think it's almost, mathematically it's not decided yet, of course, but I think it's almost logically, we would imagine they are going to be on the road. They're going to lose the division. If basically they win out and Philly wins out, Philly wins the division. And Philly's playing the Cardinals and then the Giants again. And then you have Dallas upcoming here with Detroit. And then I think they finish with the Commanders. So the schedule is easier for the Eagles, even though they have not been playing well, of course, at late. They're a whole nother story. But it's just the story of these Cowboys, right? They're scoring about 24 or so in the last couple of years points per game on the road, scoring about 40 at home. I mean, it's just a completely different team. And we were talking almost a 16-point swing there. That's ridiculous in the NFL.
Yeah.
And it's just this team relies on home field advantage. They thrive off of it. And there's just something that even home or away, they're just not buttoned up, right? They always have ill-timed penalties. They make boneheaded moves right when they need something big to happen. And you know what? Dak over the years, I've been one of those people as well. He's gotten a little bit of criticism, a little bit of hate, and like I see the guy. I think he's played great this season. I really have. Here or there, he's had a bad game, maybe that Arizona game, but for the most part, he's played well. He played well in this game. It's just that it's almost like it's a Charger situation where it's like, the Cowboys are going to cowboy, right? Like there's just something they're going to do to shoot themselves in the foot and they're going to blow the game. I mean, look at this last drive, right? So Dallas, as you mentioned, right? Huge touchdown drive. Great drive. What a throw. They marched down the field 19 plays in over 7.5 minutes, score that go-ahead touchdown. So there's about a little less than 3.5 minutes in the game. I just didn't understand what was the mindset of the Cowboys defensively, right? That's supposed to be their kind of their stalwart, right? To make the stop. And yet they were letting the Dolphins, like, it was like a death by 1,000 cuts. Like they were letting them just march on the field, piece by piece, 5 yards, 7 yards. And they were so afraid of the big play. I just don't understand. Like, you realize they're going to get down the field, then just kick the field goal and the game's over. And you look at the plays here, right? You have Achan, he goes for 6 yards on the first carry, right? But then Dallas, 15-yard face mask penalty, ill-timed penalty. Boom, that moves them another 15 yards. They get a first down. Okay, Tua on that play, he gets a short pass, 9 yards the next play. Hits Tyreek for 5 yards. All right, then he's incomplete. 7 yards, 10 yards. So it's all these methodical cuts down the field. You don't hear any big plays that were used to the Dolphins defense. 8. Then there was a gain of nothing, 6 yards, and all of a sudden, oh crap, they're down inside the Dallas 10-yard line. They kneel it, kick the field goal. I just don't understand what the mindset is there of Dan Quinn, who's going to get some head coaching looks this offseason, of course. And this, for me, I think this has been the underrated story of Dallas in the last month or so, month and a half. This defense has not played the way they did earlier in the season. They just haven't. And I think this offense has consistently performed, especially when the competition has been better for the most part. And I think this defense, even against lesser competition sometimes, that wasn't the case here, but in other games, they just haven't stood up to what they're supposed to be as the best defense in football. I don't think they've been anything close to that in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, I don't either. I really think what it comes down to with the Cowboy defense is when they're getting takeaways, they are a lethal unit. But when they're not, they're a pretty susceptible team
Yeah.
on that side of the ball. I mean, we saw early in the season some of the games where they blew teams out of the water mainly because their defense was adding like 2 touchdowns a game. You go
Exactly.
back to the Giants matchup and a couple others from early in the season, but if they're not getting takeaways, this is a defense that can be had, that you can move the ball on, and it's not really going to scare you too much. It seems like, they take too many risks trying to take away the football, that when they come up empty, they're just not equipped to stand up against, top level teams like Miami. So I really think that's a big issue there.
And a final point for this game, I think the Dolphins defense deserves a lot of credit. 5 sacks in this game. They're playing fantastically. They got that fumble at the beginning of the game. Like, what they have done since Jalen Ramsey has come back, now you could see between him and Howard how they could kind of lock down guys on the outside. Even with the injuries, like Phillips went down in that Jets game, right? They're still getting pass rush. Like, they are making what I thought a Vic Fangio defense would be at the beginning of the season. They are perfectly picking up at this time. Now the question becomes, they played a lot of bad teams beside this Dallas game during that stretch. The Jets, unfortunately, twice, all that stuff. Can they sustain that against the better teams that they're going to see in the playoffs? Well, that's the question, right? To me, Miami has 2 questions because I think this game solved for me the physicality and can they beat good teams. I have 2 questions. One, can you hold on to the number 1 seed or get the number 1 seed, because Baltimore has it right now? Because I think them being home field advantage throughout the playoffs is critical. And they absolutely have to hold the number 2 seed. That is very critical. The second one is, can this defense hold up against the better offenses that they're going to see in the playoffs? That's going to be the question to decide, hey, does this team win 1 or more games in the playoffs, or are they going home real early? And I think that's what we're going to see happen. But very impressed by Miami. Kind of the same old story from Dallas, and now they have a big game coming up here against Detroit, which really, for not only seeding for them in the division still, but just morale-wise, that's a big game that we're going to talk about in the pick section there. That is huge. Brian, the other game I wanted to talk about here that I wanted to, we're a little pressed for time here tonight, so we do apologize, ladies and gentlemen. But we have to talk about the last game of the weekend. Big hype, right? 2 11-3 teams on Christmas night. This game ends up getting over 27 million viewers, I saw, which was a crazy rating stat. The Baltimore Ravens came into San Francisco, both 11-3, as I said. They knock off the Niners 33-19, dominate, control the game, get 5 picks, 4 of Purdy, got Darnold there at the end when he was in kind of some, late game mop-up duty. Lamar Jackson, kind of a game here of who's going to be the MVP, right? There was talk of Brock Purdy, McCaffrey, and Lamar. Well, Lamar looking like the steady frontrunner, at least by Vegas odds after this game. He was fantastic. He was marvelous. This Baltimore defense, though, to me, what they were able to do, the physicality they showed all year, but to show it against a physical team like the 49ers and dominate them, I thought was thoroughly impressive. Brian, I'll ask a similar question as I did in the last game. Kind of what's the standout moment for you here? Is it more about Baltimore's dominance or maybe some QB concerns there in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a little bit of both. I mean, we both have kind of thrown a little bit of cold water on the Brock Purdy MVP
Thank you.
conversation just because
Thank you.
we felt he is obviously in a great situation playing with great talent. I mean, the best
Yes.
talent you could play with in the entire league. Now, has he played well at times? He has. But he's also been susceptible to poor performances. Now, I mean, none worse than this one on Christmas night. This was just downright poor. I mean, 4 interceptions. I know a couple of them were off tipped balls, but the reality was the Ravens defense was just absolutely hounding him, harassing him all game long. It just didn't seem like they could get anything going, and I just think you have to credit that side of the ball for the Ravens. I mean, we talked about that the reason why they are where they are. Yes, the offense has been good at times this year, although I think it has been inconsistent at times. But this defense has come to play week in and week out, and against some tough competition. I mean, some of the better offenses in the league. You think back to their matchup against the Lions. You thought that would be a kind of a nip and tuck game going back and forth in Baltimore. No, instead it was a completely one-sided affair with the Ravens just demolishing Detroit. So I think the impressive thing with the Ravens is that they've done it now against several of the top teams in the league. And I mean, none more impressive now than taking down the Niners, doing so on the road. I thought it was a big key for Lamar Jackson getting his own personal running game going because he hasn't really been running as freely as, some other years in his career, had his season-long run in this game. So I think that's a big part uh, to boost that offense is to get him running the ball. But all in all, just a thoroughly impressive, dominating showing from the Ravens, particularly on the defensive end.
Yeah, I think he's run when he's needed to. He's still a lethal weapon there, but also I think in past years, given that he's been hurt the last couple of years, they've managed that. And I think he's a very underrated passer. I mean, you don't lead the league in passing touchdowns, as I've said a couple times on this show, when he won the MVP in 2019 by accident. I think he had 36 that year or something like that. So he's efficient as well, and I think he showed that. I think he's throwing about 66 completion percentage. That's pretty solid. And his running is just, he looks different, right? Like when he's out there amongst arguably the best defense in football, it's like he's playing against a bunch of middle schoolers. Like his speed just looks different than everybody else. Like he's just a freak of nature, and I think he deserves a lot more credit than he normally gets. And I think a lot of that is rightfully levied because of, where's been his postseason success? Fair, right? But you have to context matters, right? The first time he gets into the playoffs, he's a rookie. He starts barely half the season, right? And then, they go out kind of, in a not great way to the Titans. The next year, all right, yeah. The Titans beat them. They were, I think, number 1 seed that year. Wasn't a great loss, but the Titans were kind of the rivalry, matched up with them physically. That's how the game went. And then they won it the next year. They beat the Titans, and then they lose a close game. I think it was up in Buffalo. So, and then he's been hurt the last 2 years. So I think this team is good enough without him. We saw that with Tyler Huntley last year. They're just another Super Bowl level with him. He's just that important to the offense of what he kind of makes that ridiculous jump for them. And I don't think it's an accident to be like, hey, this guy has won over 75% of his games since he started in the NFL. This guy, in 2 years that he was hurt, they were number 1 in the conference until he got hurt, the Baltimore Ravens. That matters as well. And I think he's been a little bit underrated. And hey, maybe he'll end up not being underrated and he'll get the MVP this season. But Brian, I will say before I swing it back to you, if you didn't watch this game, you look at the stats, right? If you were just a stats guy, right? You were just peeking in. You look at the Niners, right? McCaffrey over 100 yards rushing. He had almost 150 yards from scrimmage. Kittle and Ayuk both went over 100 yards. I mean, this game had to be a fireworks show. But it comes down to Brock Purdy. It does. And especially in this game, he looks skittish. He was constantly, the one thing I was noticing was he was constantly throwing off his back foot. He was constantly pedaling back off balance. Like he was scared of the pass rush. He wasn't trusting up in front. And even a play that could have easily been picked or could have been a pick six. He has a play where he's about to get sacked. He kind of throws it over his head and McCaffrey makes a nice catch and it loses like 5 yards. But even decision making like that, I'm like, what are you doing? And I think that's kind of the night that he was in for that. And he kind of has a propensity to make plays like that when he is pressured and they are not ahead and he has to make some of these bigger high-level throws when they are behind. He gets a little bit skittish. He gets a little bit uncomfortable. He takes a little bit of risks that don't need to be taken. And I think that's what we've been talking about on this show, you and I, of we're not saying this guy's bad. He's a good quarterback. But at this point in his career and how he has played, he's not the MVP. He's not. And I think finally we went from MVP to he's not MVP to MVP again, and now we're back to non-MVP. For this year at least, let's put that conversation to bed.
Yeah, no, I think the MVP, the 49ers, is Christian McCaffrey. I
By
mean, the
far.
guy week in, week out is putting up just big time numbers, scoring touchdowns basically every week. I mean, doing it in the running game, the passing game. I mean, he's just been he's right up there as an MVP candidate and the MVP of this team, I think. It just seems like it's an award where you want to give it to the quarterback, and I get it. The quarterback is the most important player. The quarterback is the show when it comes to the NFL. But at times you got to recognize, the other positions are, capable of winning the award. And I think we need to look, especially in a year like this, where a lot of the quarterback play has been down. You've
Yeah.
mentioned Myles Garrett in the past, Tyreek Hill as well. So there's some non-quarterbacks that are going to be in the conversation this year, and deservedly so.
Yeah, I think it's really these two at this point. It's Lamar and McCaffrey. And at the moment, I gave maybe Lamar the slight edge, but I think McCaffrey, he finishes up with a great 2 games here. He deserves serious consideration to win this award. I know it hasn't been won by a running back since 2012 and Adrian Peterson, but I think that consideration is well deserved of what he has done in transforming this team. And overall, greatly impressive by the Ravens. I picked the Niners. I think we both picked the Niners in this game, but I thought it would be close.
Yeah.
Did not expect a blowout, and I think, as you mentioned earlier, playoff teams they've beaten. The Rams blew out the Seahawks, blew out the Niners, blew out the Lions. Like, that matters. That matters in this league, and now they're going to go against another playoff team this weekend in Miami that we'll get to when we get to our picks. Baltimore looking mighty impressive as the top team, I think, in the NFL. Bri, because we're pressed for time, as we said, and we apologize, and I apologize once again to the audience, let's jump into our picks. We'll go right in. It's going to be a quick week here. Let's jump over to week 17. And Bri, unfortunately, man, I'm sorry to do this to you, but it starts tonight, Thursday night, the last Thursday night football game of the season. I'm sure you'll be torturing yourself watching this. The Jets will visit the Cleveland Browns. Trevor Siemian starting for your New York Football Jets. Your former New York Jet over there that you could have had this season. Joe Flacco on an ultimate hot streak there in Cleveland. Number 2 right now, I believe, in consideration in Vegas odds for comeback player of the year, given that he's only played like 4 games or something like that. It's crazy. But he's up there right now, throwing about 351 yards a game in the last 3 games. I mean, he's just been... I mean, some of the throws he made against Houston last week, that touchdown to Njoku was crazy, that throw he made. He's been overly impressive. I'm sorry, Brian. I think it's pretty simple. I think Cleveland's winning this game in the dog pound. I don't expect the Jets to put up much of a fight.
Yeah, no, I'm going with the Browns too. It was nice that the Jets, after squandering a huge lead on Christmas Eve, and it was like, can they actually lose this game after being up 27-7 against lowly Washington? And sure enough, the Commanders come all the way back, take the lead at one point. I mean, that even by Jet standards, that was like, pretty surprising.
You were dying inside when that was going on.
But fortunately, they were able to rally and get the game-winning field goal from Greg Zuerlein, so they at least squeak out a victory. Not overly impressive outside of Breece Hall, who just had a tremendous game. So, I mean, we continue to see good signs from him. He's going to have a tougher time, though, going against this Browns defense, which is one of the best in the league, as we know. And you mentioned a hot quarterback now in Flacco, who's throwing for all these yards out of nowhere. Amari Cooper, the last 2 games, has gone off 270 yards last week, so he's just been on fire. I think the Browns are really kind of starting to come into their own here now that they've gotten the quarterback position stabilized. So I think they will be able to continue their winning against, Trevor Siemian. What can you expect? Not really a whole lot. So I'm going Browns.
Yeah, the Cooper 265, 2 touchdowns last week. He was incredible. And then Breece Hall, shout out to him as well. That touchdown he had over the pylon, the awareness, fantastic play on his part. Brian, the Saturday games, again, it's that confusing time of the season, just one. It's the Lions and the Cowboys here on Saturday Night Football, taking place on basically New Year's Eve. This is a huge game. Lions still mathematically in contention for the number 1 seed, so this game matters to them, even though congrats to them clinching the NFC North last week with the win over the Vikings. First time they have a division title since 1993. We weren't even born yet. How about that? So big shout out to them. And then the Cowboys, as we said, big game for them. They're a contention still mathematically for the division, and also just as a morale standpoint, this is a huge, huge game for them. With that being said, I'm taking the Cowboys. I think at home they play completely different. They need this game more than the Lions. They need it so badly right now, and they can't lose 3 in a row and then just beat the lowly Commanders next week. That is not how you want to go into the playoffs. This game matters. I think that defense is going to stand up. Give me the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I mean, if they lose a 3rd straight game, see that the fan base can get by with the back-to-back losses on the road and just say, well, look, our team's not as good on the road.
Right.
If they come back at home where they've been dominating all season, suddenly lay an egg, then, the alarm bells really start to sound if they haven't already, which in Cowboys Nation, they're always sounding, as we know. So, yeah, I think they get back to business here, being at home. Their offense just runs at a different level. Dak Prescott plays better, CeeDee Lamb, everybody. The supporting cast, Jake Ferguson's become a nice weapon at tight end, can get the running game going a little bit more, and let that defense feed off doing what they do best, which is taking the ball away. They seem to do it better at home. The whole thing just operates better at home. I think they get back to it with a win on Saturday night.
Yeah, the important thing to note as well is the Lions and Cowboys have played some classic games in recent years, in about the last 10 years. A lot of games down to the wire, and hey, you're inside, and we know what this Lions offense and Jared Goff does indoors. So watch out. Just be careful if you're the Cowboys. The Sunday games on New Year's Eve kicked off at 1 o'clock with a huge game as well, as we mentioned earlier. The Dolphins and the Ravens. This is a massive game. These two teams, Dolphins number 2, Ravens number 1 currently. So it's a contention there for the number 1 seed. Mathematically, especially if the Browns win tonight, the Ravens have not clinched the AFC North. The Dolphins have not clinched the AFC East. So this game matters dramatically in terms of momentum, playoff seeding, division titles, all of that stuff. I think this is going to be a great one. I really am. And the last time these teams played, we saw a tremendous comeback that the Dolphins had. I don't think that's going to happen this time around. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be more physical than you think. But give me the Ravens at home to win this one in probably a lower scoring game than you think. Maybe like 27-24. Give me the Ravens.
Yeah, I kind of see it similarly. I don't think it's going to be a shootout just because I don't think that Miami high-powered offense is going to be able to make the big plays against this stingy Ravens unit on defense. Add in the fact that it looks like Jalen Waddle might not play this week, so that takes a
Yeah.
big weapon out of their offense. Yes, they'll have Tyreek Hill, but they don't really have much outside of the big two. Even at tight end, running backs don't really catch the ball much. So I see this being a game where the Ravens contain Miami. I don't think they run away from the Dolphins in this game, but I see them at home pulling it out by a field goal.
Patriots go to the Buffalo Bills. Huge questions surrounding New England. What's happening in the offseason? They got this big win over Denver this past weekend, which kind of messes them up for a possible high-level quarterback. But hey, you play to win the game, right? And I think the Bills, even though they didn't look fantastic last week against the Chargers, they still squeaked out the win. They'll need to avenge their loss earlier this season to Mac Jones and the Patriots. Give me the Bills. They have everything on the line. I know they're a roller coaster team. I expect this game to be closer than you think, but give me Buffalo.
Yeah, they are definitely a roller coaster team. I mean, that is an understatement. You thought that game last Saturday on the day before Christmas Eve would be a blowout with Buffalo just
Easton
running
Stick.
over Easton Stick and company. Yeah, and the first time I looked at the score, I see Chargers up 10-0. I'm like, oh, what
There we
do
go.
we got here? And really, it took a go-ahead field goal in the final seconds for the Bills to pull that out.
Yep.
So I know it's a win, but you got to be more impressive than that against
Yeah.
that level of competition. So yeah, the concerns for the Bills are still there. I mean, look, I think they win this game, handle their business against the Patriots, but I don't think they win, by 25 points.
Yeah.
For a while I was kind of on the Bills bandwagon. They were playing better, but to me now they just have too many of these games where they don't show up completely that they no longer are in my circle of trust. So I'm going with them to win, but yeah, I think it'll be by like 10 points and not 30.
Yeah, I think the narrative out there is that they're peaking and they're hot right now. They're still very up and down. They're just squeaking by in some of these games. But the important thing to note as well, because we're at that point of the season, they win this game. The Dolphins lose, as we're predicting. The division is on the line next week in Miami. So that's going to be a lot of fun. The Falcons go to the Bears. I mean, technically the Bears are mathematically still alive for the playoffs, even though they're a very long shot, and the Falcons are on their last legs. I mean, they lose this game, they're out. I believe they're mathematically eliminated. I don't know which way I really want to pick. I can't really trust the Falcons right now. Give me the Bears to win this game. I love how they've played the last 5 weeks defensively. Justin Fields has quietly been a very efficient quarterback, and the Falcons get a quarterback this offseason. You might actually be getting the quarterback you're playing this weekend. That might be a strong possibility given some reports. Give me the Bears to win this.
Yeah, you mean that Desmond Ritter and Taylor Heineke haven't cut it this year for Atlanta? I mean, boy.
No chance.
And that whole offense has just been one of the stranger units in the league
Yeah.
with the whole Bijan Robinson situation, the fact that Kyle Pitts, who was such a high draft pick, had so much praise coming into the league, and they just don't throw him the
It
football.
makes no
I mean,
sense.
it's just baffling. and Drake London too, so it's been an odd situation there. The Bears aren't a team that I can completely trust. You know, they have played better, I will give you that. The Falcons, though, last week, pretty impressive in their win against the Colts at home. I feel like they're a team that when you don't think they're going to win, they do, and when you do, they don't. So I'm going to take Atlanta on the road here, maybe just to be a little different.
Titans go to the Texans. Texans, all of a sudden, their playoff hopes are slowly shrinking, or maybe quickly shrinking, with CJ Stroud missing the last two games. He returned to practice. They say he looks promising, but there's no designation at this moment on Thursday that he is definitely going to start, which then I would imagine it would be Case Keenum in his stead. Regardless, the situation there in Tennessee, they played tough last week, lost kind of a heartbreaker to Seattle. Will Levis probably not playing this game. Tannehill probably getting the start again. I think Houston will eke out a win at home. Give me the Texans.
I agree. I mean, I think it just comes down to, and we don't have it confirmed that Stroud will be back, but it seems like it's trending that way. The fact that he's cleared the protocol, that he's back on the practice field. See, to me, the pick last week, as soon as you knew Stroud wasn't going to play, it was easy. You go with the Browns, and they won convincingly. Now you get your quarterback back. He's played at such a high level all season, particularly at home. I think they handle their business in this divisional matchup. Houston.
Another AFC matchup here for the AFC South is the Raiders and the Colts. The Raiders go visit the Colts. Raiders, all of a sudden, quietly, defensively, looking a little red hot in the last month, playing really well against for interim head coach Antonio Pierce, making his bid to kind of have a permanency in the job there. Huge upset win last week over the Kansas City Chiefs. Colts fighting for the playoff life. Raiders still mathematically in this game. I've kind of went back and forth on who I think is going to win this game. Right now, I think I'm going to still stick with the Colts at home. I've gone back and forth. I think this is the Colts' final bid. I like Shane Steichen. I think Gardner Minshew can at least do enough, maybe not turn the ball over in this game. I'm going to take the Colts in a really close, ugly one, but wouldn't be shocked if the Raiders make an upset here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just kind of feel like this is a spot where you could be for a letdown on the Raiders side. That big emotional win, nobody expected. They were a 10-point underdog and they handled the Chiefs. I mean, like you said, defense playing really well. Part of that, yes, is the Chiefs' problems that have been ongoing all season.
Yes.
But the Raiders have been far more competitive since the coaching change. I don't think there's any question. Along the way, there have been some games, namely that one at home against Minnesota where they were shut out and lost 3-0. So occasionally I feel like they can have these games where you just don't know what to make of them. I think it'll be a close game, but I think the Colts at home fighting for their playoff lives will have enough to take it.
Thing too, crazy. Aiden O'Connell doesn't complete a pass after the first quarter against that Chiefs defense, and they still won. Just crazy stuff.
And still no Josh Jacobs
I know
too.
it's why. And hey, Zamir White looked pretty damn good closing out that game.
Yep.
Panthers go to the Jags, and once upon a time ago, Brian, the Jags were 8-3, looking like one of the best teams in the conference, up there for the number one seed. And then Lawrence got hurt, and they've lost four straight. It's been a very rough month of the season this last month here for the Jags. But regardless of Lawrence, who is questionable for this game with multiple injuries, regardless if he starts or not, the Jags need to win this game. You're playing at home against the Panthers, the worst team in football. Give me the Jags, and they better be careful here because the Panthers playing a little bit better in the last couple weeks, and the Jags are fighting for their lives in the AFC South with the Texans and the Colts. Give me the Jags to win this one.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Carolina got a win there, that divisional matchup against Atlanta, and put up 30 points against the Packers, came up 3 points short, but certainly pretty competitive. This, though, is a game that you just feel like it's a get right game for Jacksonville, which
Has to
just
be.
hasn't been playing well, as you mentioned. I certainly would feel better about the Jags pick if you knew Trevor Lawrence was a full go. That remains to be seen, but even so, I have to feel like this is a game where the Jags get back to playing at their best, running the ball with Travis Etienne, and they win this one by double digits. If they don't, you suddenly wonder not only can this team win games in the playoffs, can they even get to the
Yeah,
playoffs? Those
it'd be
questions would
bad.
start to arise.
The Rams play the Giants at 1 o'clock here in East Rutherford. Unfortunately, because it's New Year's Eve, no one wanted to go to the game, so I won't be at it. I'm picking the Rams in this one. I don't even want to talk about it a lot just because if you lose this game, I mean, you basically lose your chance of the playoffs. So, like, you can't lose to the 5-10 Giants. So, give me the Rams to win this one.
Yeah, so the Giants going in a different direction at quarterback, officially going back to Tyrod Taylor, the Tommy DeVito experiment.
It's over.
Fun while it lasted, certainly gave some good memories for Giant fans, but it didn't feel like it was going to be one that had staying power, and clearly it didn't, starting with that game against the Saints and then coming out on the Christmas Day against the Eagles, where they end up going to Taylor in the second half, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, look, Brian Daboll is in the business to win games. Tyrod Taylor at this point is the better quarterback, so that's what you go with. DeVito maybe has a chance to win the backup job next year. I think he has a good chance to. He
Yeah,
certainly did some
good
good
shot.
things this year, but your team right now playing pretty well. I mean, watching that Thursday night game, this offense, Stafford really looks like he's playing well. I mean, Puka Nakua has really just been a great story all
Offensive rookie of
season.
the year, baby.
Cup getting healthier, running the ball with Kyron Williams. It seems like right now, running back wise, McCaffrey 1, Kyron Williams 2, as far as how they
Mm-hmm.
played this year. So he's just been that good. I think they continue the role here and handle the
Yeah,
Giants
they've
on
been
the
top
road.
five in pretty much all major offensive categories in about the last five-ish or so weeks. Basically, since Kyron came back in that Arizona game, they've been the best offense in the league. Cardinals, Eagles, really not anything to say here. Cardinals are going to give them a fight with former defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, who they have sorely missed. I'm going to take the Eagles. This game's going to be a lot closer than you think. The Eagles are not equipped this season, as they've shown, to blow anybody out. But I think they'll still win this game with everything on the line. Give me Philly.
Yeah, I'm going Philly. They clearly are not playing good football. I
No,
mean, even
they've
in the
said it.
win against the Giants, right, they've said it, and that looked like a game that had the makings of being a total blowout. They had a big lead. They come out in the second half, and too many self-inflicted
Yep.
wounds. I mean, the opening kickoff, the return man runs into his own teammate, loses the ball, gives the Giants a short field. They punch it in with Saquon Barkley. Suddenly, you have a game of it. Then you get a pick six of Jalen Hurts by Adoree Jackson, and you had a game going down the
Yeah.
stretch there. So not one that you expected, but it just shows the Eagles continue to not click on all cylinders. That's been the case now for several weeks. This is a game I mean, if they don't win, it's like something's really, really wrong here.
Yes.
It already feels like something is amiss and has been for some time, but I think they find a way to win this one by double digits.
Saints Bucks. This is a huge game. Atlanta obviously in there as well. Those three teams competing for the NFC South title. The Bucks with the ones with the upper hand. The Saints actually the team on the outside looking in. They need this game. But the way Baker's been playing in the last month and this Bucks team, give me Tampa Bay to win this and basically clinch up the division.
Yeah, the Bucks I would have to put as the biggest surprise team this season. I
Absolutely.
mean, you and I in our preview show, we were naming some of the teams we thought would be the worst in the league, Arizona, which everybody knew, and you and I both thought Tampa would be among the worst
Yeah.
besides them. Give them credit. I mean, they
They've been
haven't
great.
listened to any of the naysayers. Baker Mayfield, particularly lately, is playing great football. Mike Evans continues to quietly put up big numbers, having another productive season. This is a game where the Saints can just continue the chaos that is that division if they win this game. But I just think Tampa's too hot right now. I don't like the play of Derek Carr game in and
No.
game out this year. So I'm trusting Baker more and the Bucks on a good groove right now to continue it at home.
Niners Commanders, really not worth talking about. I expect the Niners to get back on track. They're going to annihilate Jacoby Brissett and the Commanders, and I expect a 25-30 point win. Give me the Niners.
Yeah, you would expect that coming off, the game that we talked about against the Ravens. They're going to take their frustrations out on Washington in this game. Commanders, as you mentioned, going to Brissett. Sam Howell had been the guy all along, had his moments early on, but really just has not played well of late, so they make the change. I kind of wonder about the future of Ron Rivera there. I think he
I think
might
it's
be on the
over.
way out after the season. And 49ers, I think, will get back to their 49er ways this week.
The late afternoon games kick off with a 4:05 standalone 4:05 game. The Steelers visit Seattle. Big game for playoff seeding for both of these teams, both coming in 8-7. I think it's going to go back and forth here. It's going to be a very low scoring, probably ugly offensive game. But give me the Seahawks at home, probably honestly like 17-14. I think it's going to be one of those games. Seahawks been the cardiac Hawks, I guess, the last couple weeks with back-to-back walk-off victories. Give me them to win this one more so pretty handily.
Yeah, this is one that I'm kind of going back and forth on. I think I'm actually going the other way here and going
Okay.
Pittsburgh. You got a very spirited effort from the Steelers in a game I don't think many people expected, that game against Cincinnati,
Yeah.
where they blew
Huge.
them out. And they stick with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. I mean, George Pickens, fresh off your bashing him, had his best
Yeah.
game of the
Hey,
year
maybe
with
he
two
heard me.
long
Maybe he was
touchdowns.
hearing it a little bit.
Maybe he did. He certainly had a huge game. So I think, the Mike Tomlin coach teams, they have too much pride. I think they're going to fight, scratch, and claw and make a game of this and find a way to pull it out on the road. Won't be pretty, but I think they get it done.
Yeah, 195 yards, I believe he had. What a response coming after the media, not me, but the actual media, really coming down on him hard. Great rebound performance for him. His best game maybe as a pro. The 425 games are kicking off with the Chargers and the Broncos. I mean, this is not even worth talking about. The only storyline here is Russell Wilson getting benched, which I think we all seen coming. Jared Stidham will be getting the start here. I would imagine Easton Stick is starting for the Chargers again. Hey, they gave it a fight last week, but they're still not very good. I guess I'm taking Denver at home, sort of, but this game's going to be ugly. Who cares? Give me Denver.
Yeah, I honestly am not sure. It's just kind of funny that Jarrett Stidham, it's kind of the exact situation he was in last year with Vegas. They benched Derek Carr late
Oh,
in the
man.
season. He picks up the final couple of games. Now the next year goes to a different opponent in the same division, takes over for the former Pro Bowl quarterback.
Yep.
So it's almost like deja vu for Stidham.
Wild.
Uh, the Chargers definitely put up a fight. It really seems like when teams make the coaching change, at least initially, you get a big effort, and the Chargers certainly did in that Bills game. I'll take Denver to pull it out on the at home, just because Easton Stick on the road. I don't think there's going to be much there, but like you said, this is not going to be one where a lot of eyeballs will be on the screen.
No. The other 425 game is the Bengals going to Arrowhead, and this normally was going to be, I mean, a game. Second to last game of the year. We anticipated the Chiefs being a lot better. Joe Burrow for the Bengals, and then all of a sudden Burrow out for the year, and the Chiefs have played terribly. They've lost 3 of 5. They've not been good here. I'm taking the Chiefs just because they had the better quarterback. Mahomes is infinitely better than Jake Browning, who came a little bit back to earth last week against the Chargers, but this is a get right game here for the Chiefs. I mean, this Bengals defense is stingy. I've given them a lot of praise on this show. Mahomes better figure this out, him and Kelsey, because it's looking ugly. We don't have time today to talk about it, but we'll definitely talk about what's going on there next week. Give me the Chiefs to win this.
Yeah, I'm going with the Chiefs. I have a feeling it's going to be a close game. It's going to be one
Probably.
where they have to pull it out late because that's just been their way this season. And yeah, I mean, the offense it's just not been there. It just seems like defenses are making a concerted effort to take away Kelsey. Doesn't seem like he's playing his best football, more drops than usual, just not getting those big plays that you're accustomed to seeing every week from him. And they just don't have the receivers to get separation and that Mahomes can trust to catch the football. It's all adding up to diminished results. So I think the Chiefs find a way to win, but I think it's another close one.
The Monday night game, the final game of the weekend on New Year's Eve, is Packers Vikings, both 7-8, but a huge game in terms for playoff kind of contention, berths, and seeding here. Basically, either one of these teams loses, they're dead. It's over. So it's just basically a win or you go home game, one of those classics here. The Vikings announced a few hours ago they are starting rookie Jaron Hall over Nick Mullins. He is getting benched after he threw 4 picks last week in Detroit. I don't know really who to pick here because both of these teams have impressed at some moments and then have been terrible at some moments. But the Vikings against the Packers, for some reason, have had their number. I've gone back and forth. I'm going to take the Vikings in this one. And I know it's a rookie at QB, and I get it, but these last few games, including last week where the Packers almost lost to the Panthers, I've not been impressed. And I think even though the Packers are overall the better team, there's just something weird going on there here in the last 3 weeks or so. Give me the Vikings to pull this one out and probably a really boring, low-scoring, ugly game.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning the same way. I mean, it's just amazing the number of quarterbacks that have played this year. I mean, there's teams that have used 4 different
Wild.
quarterbacks, like you mentioned, Minnesota, of course, the Jets. I went through like the 32 teams, and I think I counted about 9 or 10 this season that have used the same quarterback every week.
Yep.
So it's just been one of those years. I think the Vikings pull it out. I mean, look, you don't feel great about it with Jaron Hall. I mean, we just don't know what he is. He had that one appearance where he got replaced by Josh Dobbs, and they wound up pulling out the win there in Atlanta. But I'm just going to go on the skill position players, the fact that Justin Jefferson is back healthy.
Looking great.
I think they'll get some explosive plays. Jordan Addison as well. And at home, a place where you mentioned they played well against Green Bay in recent years, going back to when Rodgers was there. I think they'll continue it this time around.
Yeah, unfortunately, no TJ Hawkinson tore his ACL, MCL in that Detroit game. The tight end for the Vikings, he is out for the year. Best wishes to him. Guys, that's going to wrap up a very quick episode here. Hopefully it was good enough for you. It was like 40-ish or so minutes of First and 10, covering Week 16 and then really jumping into those Week 17 picks. Guys, Happy New Year out there. Huge games for the playoffs. I hope your team is still in it, or maybe your team's playing spoiler, and that's also a little bit of fun too. We've both been there as well. Bri, I'd like to thank you for being on. All socials are down below, all that timestamps, all that other stuff. Have a happy, lovely New Year, guys, and until next time, thanks for watching.